kids, it's the Bisson and Fly here, hope you're well. Now I'm out and about trying out another bike, and this is a machine that I want to ride for some time, and a number of people have said that I should try, because as you may know, I'm a big fan of the street triple I have, and this potentially is the next step along. This is the speed triple. Now I have ridden a speed triple before. I rode one about 4 years ago when I was buying the street, but I found that actually it just felt heavy, and just really didn't give me anything that the street triple didn't give me, and the street triple had some advantages over it, so I went for the street at that time. However, since then, 4 years ago, the bike, the speed triple, has been revamped on at least 2 occasions, and this latest one, the 2016 model, has had 104 revisions to the bike since the last model, so it's quite a different machine to the one I rode before. So stick around, stay tuned, and I'll tell you my first impressions and thoughts on the Speed Triple R. So my very first thoughts on this bike are that it feels a lot lighter than I remember it. Oh, hello sir. It doesn't actually feel that much more heavy on the move than the street triple, which surprised me. I really expected it to feel a heavy old lump, but it doesn't at all. It's got a very familiar sound to me. It's got obviously the 1050cc engine. It's basically the same architecture, the same engine as the one that I had in my old Triumph Tiger, although as I say, this has had many changes, so it's much more updated. It's a bit narrower, the engine. They've done some work to all the internals to make it more powerful and reduce noise for Euro 4 compliance, all that kind of thing. So it is quite different, although it has got that familiar old triple sound that I quite love. Seating position wise, it's very familiar. It feels exactly the same as sitting on the street triple, it really does, except the seat is a bit wider. Seat's quite comfortable. Didn't look like it was going to be comfortable, but it actually is. Your legs are tucked up relatively high underneath you, but not in an uncomfortable manner, and of course, it being a naked upright bike, you're sitting upright, so that's nice. So yeah, you could ride this all day long, very comfortable. This, as I mentioned, is the R version, so this has the uprated Olin suspension front and back on it, whereas the standard, slightly cheaper bike, the S, I think has Shower big piston forks on it, so not shabby by any means, but this one's got the splendid suspenders on it, and this has got the Brembo M50s, which actually the S has got as well, so great brakes. We'll just check, make sure there's nothing on, give them a try. Yeah, the brakes are very sharp. That might just be that it's of course a new bike and they're just still really good bikes, good brakes rather, but they do feel good. So the brakes are great. Suspension feels nice and plush, as you would hope, I guess, from Olin's, but it is fully adjustable, so you know, I'm sure you could soften it up even more if you wanted to. What I need to do now is find a road without all these cars on. This particular bike has got its Rev Limiter lights adjusted incorrectly. Look, you can set that up. It's the same as on the street triple, and this one they just come on when you're doing about 3,000 RPM, which is not very useful at all. They made a load of styling changes on the bike, and I'll stop in a minute and show you around the machine. Things like they've revamped the lights and so on, but one of the things that they have done, which is a good thing, let's take this opportunity to get by this truck, is changed out the horrible plastic brake reservoir for a slightly nicer horrible plastic brake reservoir just here. But it's kind of smoked and see-through, so it's a bit more practical maybe, and it looks much nicer than the white plastic one used to, so that's a good step, although I'd probably still swap it out for an anodised one because I'm funny like that. She handles lovely. She's a lot more flickable than I remember. Most off-putting having those rev lights on all the time pretty much. I think you should be constantly changing up gear. That's entirely a user set thing. The other thing, or big changes on this bike over the speed triple I rode years ago, and indeed my old Triumph Tiger, is it has now got a ride-by-wire throttle, so that allows you to do things like have engine modes, which this has. It's got an engine mode button just here. There are 6 engine modes. I'm just in road at the moment. I'll change it, which you do simply by pressing the button, which is good. Let's go for, oh, I don't know, I want rain. Let's try sport. There we go, we're in sport mode. Oh yes, and that does seem to just sharpen up the throttle a bit. I don't know if it does anything in terms of power output, but certainly the throttle is now a little bit sharper. A bit nicer actually, a bit more like I'm used to. Yeah, so nice and comfortable, brakes are good, rider position's nice, seat's good, it feels agile, sounds nice. I think what I need to do is stop and show you around the bike. Right. Okay, so here she is, the 2016 Speed Triple R. So this is the top of the range model, if you like. As I mentioned, it's got adjustable suspension and a few extra trinkets over the base model. I think this one on the road, £11,500, whereas the base model is I think 10.5. So you're basically paying the extra for the suspension and some bits and pieces like the carbon mudguard, etc. Just a little look around at some of the obvious changes. We've got these funky new lights. Lights on Triumphs are always controversial. But actually, I didn't think I was going to like these more rounded lights, but actually they look quite good. And we've got the air intake as well on the nose cone, which presumably is a practical thing, but looks fine. Actually, I don't like this colour very much. This is the white one. The S model comes in a black, which I think looks a bit meaner. Okay, in terms of the numbers, she's 140 brake horsepower, so not as powerful as some of the other bikes in this sort of class when you're looking at things like the Aprilia Tuono. Bikes like that are much more powerful these days. This is basically an old model, an old machine now for Triumph, so although they've very much updated it and kept pace with modern trends, it still is, I guess, you know, fairly old basic design. But it depends what you want out of a bike. If you don't want a complete hooligan, then you know, this might be for you. It's a pretty meaty looking machine, I think. Other important numbers, weight wise, it's 192 kilograms dry, I think 212 wet, so not a particularly heavy bike, nor particularly light, it has to be said. And of course it's got the electronics complement that you expect on bikes these days. It's got switchable traction control and ABS, of course. Okay, enough chat, let's go and ride it some more. Wow, sun's coming out. Nice change for this summer. It's been an absolutely pant summer in Blighty. Most disappointing. Right, when you're manoeuvring the bike at slow speed, again, doesn't feel as heavy as I anticipated. And yeah, she pulls very nicely. Definitely quicker than the Street Triple. If you want acceleration, then you're not going to be disappointed. Let's face it, who doesn't want acceleration? I like the fact that as standard you've got these bar end mirrors as well, and they're very effective. They're you know, much bigger than the old accessory Triumph ones that you used to be able to get, and they're actually quite practical. They look good. You wouldn't need to swap those out. I like what they've done with the switch gear. They've redesigned this. They've had to because the extra modes and things that you now have available to you. Feels quite well made. Looks nice and neat. Obvious how it works. So that's all good. To be honest with you, I can't really find anything to fault with this bike at all. It goes nicely, sounds good. It's all nice. I guess it's kind of down to what you want out of a bike, and if you were to compare it with some of the others in this sort of class, the BMW S1000R, for example, I think that's the naked one, and the Aprilia Tuono that I mentioned, then they're the bikes it's up against, and I'm not too sure that you know, it any longer can compete against those boys. So I guess you have to think of it in a slightly different bracket to those, just because it's not as powerful. Right, I've got a clear road now. But you know, 140 brake horsepower is not to be sniffed at. It's by no means a slouch. Okay, to summarise then, what are my initial thoughts on the Speed Triple? First time I've ridden one, as I say, for about 4 years, and it's had a lot of changing since I've ridden one. I've been overall very impressed with the bike. I really like it. It doesn't feel anywhere near as heavy as I expected. It feels quite light and flickable. Obviously not as light and flickable as the Street Triple, but not far off, to be honest. It handles really nicely. It doesn't feel like it's going to rip your arms off or anything. It's not an intimidating bike. And with all the modern features like traction control and ABS and riding modes and so on, you really don't need to be scared of it as a machine. It's a very friendly bike, it seems to me. Looks good. It's a Triumph, so you know, and British made. So love all that. Just being you know, patriotic about it. I like the idea of Triumph ownership, so that ticks the boxes for me. And a really nice looking machine. The cosmetic changes they've done, I think, aren't a retro step. You know, in fact, they've maybe have improved it with those lights. Not too sure on that. I'm still jury's slightly out on that, but comfortable. Feels quite wide when you ride it, but it's not unwieldy in any way. So yeah, overall, I mean, it's just a sensible, safe bike. There's nothing about it that blows me away. I'm not thinking, wow, I've got to have one of those. But at the same time, which is how I felt on some other bikes, but at the same time, I'm not thinking, you know, that's a dog. So maybe if it's your first sort of super naked, if this fits into that category, then maybe it's the way to go. And well worth a test ride. If you're thinking of a street triple, maybe have a ride on one of these, see which you prefer. Okay, so there we have it. That's my thoughts on the Triumph Speed Triple, the 2016 model. Hope that's been of some interest to you. I look forward to speaking to you next time. Until then, this has been the Missenden Flyer. Cheerio.